Yeah, it does say it is recording on my computer, so hopefully that'll be okay.
Hello. Hope you guys can hear me.
Hello.
Hello, Mark. How you doing?
Very well, yourselves?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Yeah.
Good. Craig's going in well.
Good afternoon, all.
Hello.
Hello, Craig. How you doing?
Yeah, very well. Thank you, yourself.
Yeah, very well. Thank you. Oh, good. Oh, good. We've got quite a few people coming to this. About 50 people have signed up. So
that's good. That's really good.
And it's just for partners and existing customers, this one. So. Right. So yeah, if everyone can go on mute while it's going on, and then just unmute yourself if there is a question to answer, and we'll sort of direct it appropriately at the end.
Brilliant. Cool.
Cool. Okay. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. We're going to be starting shortly. We're just waiting for everybody to join. So if we could just give a couple of minutes for that, we're going to be starting soon. Everybody that's just joined or is joining, we are just waiting for a few more people to join, and then we're going to start.
Okay, man, I think we're ready to go.
Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Juriba AppAvail acquisition webinar. Thank you all very much for joining us. We hope this is going to be an interesting and engaging experience for you. My name is Monique Commandeer, and I'm the marketing manager here at Juriba. Before we get started, it's important to note that this webinar will be recorded. We're going to try to keep the event interactive, so you can expect a few polls along the way. There will also be a Q&A session at the end of the event. So if you simply click on the box towards the bottom right of your screen, type in your question and click submit, we're going to do our best to answer your question. We're going to try and get through as many questions as possible, but if your question is not selected, don't you worry, we will reach out to you directly. Okay, it's my pleasure to introduce today's speakers. Barry Angell, co-founder and CEO of Juriba, as well as David Higginbotham, Juriba's executive pre-sales analyst. Also here to help with our technical and sales questions, we have Charlie Slicer-Watkinson and Craig and Mark Jones. Great. Barry, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Mon. So welcome along, everyone. Really excited to talk to you a bit more about Juriba's acquisition of AppAvail. This has been a process that's been going on for some months now. So some of you will have already seen some of this technology. Some of it will be new to certain people. Excuse me. And this is a specific webinar purely for partners and customers of Juriba. So obviously we're not going to talk too much about the Dashworks platform. We'll just focus very much on the technology here today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through a very quick presentation just to explain a little bit about what AppAvail is and what it brings to Juriba. And then we'll talk in future about or show you a lot more about the actual technology itself. So let's just quickly, for the guys that may not know Juriba, Juriba's a 12-year-old company. We provide a command and control platform to help manage evergreen IT projects. And essentially our mission really is to become the world-leading software platform for enterprise evergreen IT and IT transformation management. So effectively any change that you're managing in the end user compute space, we want Juriba to be a core part of delivering that particular service out to your customers. So today, as I said, quick presentation, and then we're going to focus on the two key areas of the acquisition. So firstly, that's the smoke testing module, and secondly, that's the automated application packaging solution. And then we'll end it just by talking a little bit about the roadmap for this particular product, because we've got a lot of things that we're going to be adding to this in the next 3, 6, 9 months. And so it's important that you know what's coming up. And then hopefully at the end, we'll have time for some questions and answers. Okay, so I just wanted to start with the journey. So as with all of our customers and partners, a lot of companies are still in the transformation space. So still looking very much at finishing off the Windows 10 migrations, still rolling out the Office 365 client, virtualizing from physical devices to virtual platforms, and then a new one, which is essentially the move towards an MDM platform like Intune or Workspace ONE. So lots of companies still transforming and getting to the platforms of choice. What we're talking about today much more is the bottom right hand side there, the evergreen IT space. So as the transformations have occurred and completed, what we tend to find then is that the velocity of change that Microsoft are pushing really is starting to focus the mind on evergreen IT. So how can we as organizations within our business as usual teams manage all of this change that's being pushed at us at in some cases a quite frightening velocity. So where Juriba's focused is effectively and efficiently managing that perpetual change across multiple continuous deployments. So we'll talk a little bit more about how this particular acquisition fits into that space. So I just wanted to spend a minute on why we purchased AppAvail. So if you look at the end user compute stack, we have at the bottom there all of our infrastructure tools. So this is our Active Directory, SCCM, Citrix, VMware, productivity tools, the OS. All of that sits within that infrastructure stack. Now, on top of that infrastructure stack, you have the left-hand side, which is essentially our asset management side. So where you're looking at tools like ServiceNow or Remedy or Snow, being able to manage all of the assets within your environment and attempt to manage the life cycle on them. On the right-hand side, you've then supplemented that with help desk systems, enterprise application portals, and the orange being a sort of a relatively new area, I guess, in terms of how we're using it, but essentially the building in of tools such as Eternity, Systrack, NextThink, to a lesser extent, probably at the moment, Desktop Analytics, but managing that end user experience. Now, Dashworks, our platform, has always sat in the middle of all these tools. So any change that's happening in bulk, we've been the command and control center for that change. And obviously the use cases are expanding daily for the things that we need to run through it. Now, what we found in the past is that a lot of our projects got stuck with the application management side. So whether that was new application packages or testing existing application packages, or even just finding out whether an application was compatible with a new platform, tended to be a large bottleneck. And we relied a lot on third-party tools to be able to provide this information into our projects. Now, given that was such a gap, and we had the opportunity to work very closely with the AppAvail team, we decided that this was an area we could actually bring into Juriba and bring into the Dashworks platform. So the ability now not only to project command and control, but also to manage the application estate, obviously gives us a much wider capability and pushes us much closer to that vision of being the one-stop shop for all of your change initiatives and feeding that in. So this is where in that black box in the middle that the AppAvail product sits in terms of the end user compute stack. Now, as we all know, we are moving or have moved from the big bang migrations of the past with dedicated project teams into this brave new world of perpetual change. So as we look towards the future and how we're going to manage that perpetual change, it's really a case of changing some of our processes, changing some of our tooling to be able to manage that ongoing change rather than having the dedicated resource performing this function. Now that's all well and good, and this is great for things like Windows 10. But the reality is that most of you are managing far, far more than just Windows 10 updates. You know, a lot of you will be managing OS migrations. A lot of you will be managing hardware refresh projects. There might be an initiative to roll out Teams or Yammer. There could be mobile device refreshes. We could be retiring IE11. We could be pushing a software optimization project. All of these things are happening simultaneously. And that's really what Evergreen is all about. It's not just managing the Microsoft stack, it's also managing all of those things that are in the ecosystem to keep them within support and to keep them within good warranty status. So ultimately, the plan is to have obviously all of these projects running simultaneously. And this is where a lot of our challenges lie, is how on earth do we cope with this level of change? So what it means, and certainly in my history, what it has meant for our application teams is that there is a huge amount of demand on them. So if you imagine on the left-hand side, we've got 5, 6, 8, 10 different projects running simultaneously. All of those projects may be relying on the application teams. They might need to know whether an application has been packaged. They might need to know if it's been tested, if it's compatible with a new platform. And the challenge that we have is that each of those project teams, especially if they work in silos, is really pushing a lot of demand onto those application teams. And it's not just the internal IT application teams, it's also the business application teams, people even in development who might need to remediate their application so it's suitable for a platform. So typically, this is an area that becomes a significant bottleneck. So not for want of trying, but for the ability to push through a significant amount of process in a single team does put these resources under a lot of strain. And so what typically happens is that we either have projects where we end up not testing applications at all, or we don't test them properly, or we give our application owners a time frame and hope they've tested in time, or we take the risk. So we start to push applications out into the environment that we know haven't been through a proper process, and then hope that if they don't break, great stuff. If they do break, that we catch it early, and then we can move on and remediate them and stop any other rollouts. But it's not the perfect way of doing this. The perfect way of doing this would be to have a very efficient process where we can get these applications through at a much faster speed. And of course, if we don't manage that, this is where we end up with the increased risk. We typically end up with a larger headcount, and typically as a result, end up with a larger spend to actually deliver these projects. And this is what we're trying to address with the AppAvail acquisition. So we just wanted to fire out a poll. So I've got a poll ready around the biggest application management challenge that you face. So hoping that this works, let's launch the polling. And if we could get everyone to just decide from this list which of these you consider to be the biggest application management challenge in your environment. We'll give that a few seconds while people start to vote, and then we can have a look at what comes in. I think in reality, all of these are problems that we face, and the challenges are many. So I think we've got quite a few votes coming in. I'll just give it another 10 or 15 seconds, and then we can see what the results are. Okay, let's just give it a few more seconds. So last chance to vote. Okay, great stuff. Right, let's end the polling and share the results. Okay, so what you can see here is that we've got buy-in from business units as being the top application management challenge. That's not really a surprise. Certainly, if I think back to my days at JP Morgan, even understanding who the app owners were was a big challenge, let alone getting business units to actually focus on the testing that they need to do. So the reality is that, as IT, we need to hopefully take that process away from them. So if we can actually provide them with an answer rather than providing them with a test solution, that's going to negate a lot of that challenge. Equally, you can see there, second and third, the volume of projects and the frequency of updates is significant, and the time it takes to test packages, again, significant for some people. Interesting to note, actually, around the new packaging formats. This is very common at the moment. We have a big push from Microsoft to move to these new packaging formats like MSIX. Very rare that anyone's actually attempting it right now. But this will be something, no doubt, in 2021 that starts to become more important for people. So this is where we're at with the poll. So thank you for answering there. And so where are we at now? Well, we have obviously a lot of contact across a lot of different organizations, but there's some very common themes here. Number one is that the move of applications to the cloud, being able to deliver them through facilities like Intune, eventually maybe moving to WVD. All of these things are in the strategy deck somewhere. for most of our customers. They may be different, different sections of that we are living in. So some people just starting, some people much more in POC, but it is certainly a direction of travel across all of the companies that we deal with. Application compatibility is still highlighted as one of the major bottlenecks for change. So the ability to handle that and address it is very important, and automation is again another key thing. Certainly if you look at the application packaging world, things have progressed, but it's not really that different to how it was 20 years ago, and this is something that we believe we can change with the move forward with AppAvail. And on the right hand side is the scary number. So we asked a number of our customers what they're paying today for an application package, what they're paying today to test an application in their environment. And the average, and this is by no means the worst, some of there was a lot higher numbers out there, but around $680 per application is what we're looking at every year to repackage it and actually test it against the new platform. So it's a significant spend that we're all facing. Okay, now if we just look at how maybe some other companies are doing it. So so obviously with our new solution, we can start to address these problems. So on the left-hand side, we have the evergreen IT smoke testing automation, and on the right-hand side, we have the self-service application packaging module. Now, the idea is that both of these really are designed to help us get to new platforms much quicker than we have done previously. So if we can do zero-touch testing, if we can do a less intrusive application packaging process, then obviously we can help not only deliver a better service to our customers, but also we can start to deliver a much more standardized methodology to repeat these processes every time we get a new Win 10 release or whatever it may be. Now you can also buy these modules standalone, so you don't have to have Dashworks to be able to run these, and you can also buy each individual component standalone, so you can just buy the smoke test, or you can just buy the application packaging part. Obviously our vision here is to make all of this part of the Juriba Dashworks platform. So having the ability to then utilize this data within our BAU and within our projects, obviously then gives us an entire end-to-end solution. So that's where the vision lies. Now, in terms of the evergreen application testing, obviously we spend a lot of time doing this. So certainly if we look at an average environment, let's say we had 1,000 applications, and this is a quite conservative number really, but most of our customers would allocate at least 90 minutes or an hour and a half to testing each application. Now, if our estate's 1,000 apps, it means that we would need 187 resource days just to manage and coordinate that test process. And obviously that's a significant cost and a significant time drain on our environment and our resourcing. So the reality is that we don't spend that amount of time and we don't test all of the apps, simply because it's often not possible to do it within the time frame we've got to actually roll these updates out. Now, Dashworks Application Manager completely automates this process. So rather than spending 90 minutes per app with lots of manual coordination, we can test these apps on an average between 7 and 15 minutes. And not only that, but because the solution is running at the back end, it can be available 24/7, and therefore the same amount of apps would take us 46 hours to complete. So, it's a huge difference, 2 days versus potentially, 60 days with 3 people. So it's a huge difference that we can bring into the environment for the testing side. Now, on the application packaging side, again, most of you will be very familiar with some quite slow processes, not necessarily in the factory itself, but in the processes around the factory. So actually just getting the request into a system, getting the install source media, getting the install instructions, all of these kind of things can take a long time to produce. And this drives the timeline that the factory is working towards. Then coordinating the UAT with the application owner, and then finally often having to raise change control before you can deploy it into your environment. So, and certainly again, if I look back at my JP Morgan days, there was no way, you know, from point of entry to point of exit, this was going to take less than a month. None of our business units would ever expect us to have a fully packaged and deployed application in less than that time. And I don't know what you guys all experience today, but I'm pretty sure it won't be, you know, as slick as it probably should be. So what we're doing with the application manager packaging component is effectively wrapping this all into a single process with a drive towards a much more self-service methodology. So being able to take an application request from the application owner, feed in all the information that we need automatically, and that essentially is just the media. Being able to launch and package that application within a virtual machine, all as part of the same process. Being able to QR that application package, again, all within the same process. And then being able to provision that application out into tools like SCCM, again, all within the same process, means that if we make this as slick as we possibly can, and the package can be auto-packaged, and obviously there will always be applications that potentially can't be, but for the ones that can be auto-packaged, we're looking at a single process. So ideally being able to do this entire process within minutes rather than days and weeks. So again, you know, in terms of the service, a huge increase in capability, in terms of the experience for the end user. Again, you know, a completely different experience to what they've had today. So this is really where we're pushing with both of these different components. Now, the final slide, I just wanted to cover where we're at with the integration with Dashworks. So for a lot of the guys that are on the webinar, you'll already have Dashworks in place. So you're already familiar with the data warehouse, the project command and control center. What we're now doing is we're adding in these extra components. So if you look at a typical project, we would start with our scoping in the data warehouse at 12 o'clock there. We then would flip out into the application management module. So we'd be managing the automated app tests. We'd be managing the self-service UAT for any apps that are business critical and would need a manual sign-off. Anything that needs remediating, repackaging could also then go through this module or maybe a conversion to a new format. And then as those things happen, obviously that data can feed into Dashworks. We can give a nice RAG status and process status as to where these applications are. And then we can start to drive our automated ring management for deployment, kick off the communications within Dashworks, and then automate those deployment events out to the environment and report back from a project or program perspective. So this is really the vision. This is what we want any project that effectively has an application dependency within it to be able to achieve. And I should say with all these slides, we'll make these available later on again. So if you need any of this information, then you will have access to it as part of the webinar. So it's time really to go with the demonstration. So we're going to be looking at the two sides of the tool, and I'm going to take you through an evergreen IT test, capture a quick functional test, so you can see that as part of the solution. And then we'll also self-package an application. So let's move into that. And as Monique said earlier, if you guys have any questions, do post them into the Q&A box, and then we will try and answer those towards the end of the webinar. Okay, let's get into the tool itself. Okay, so this is the solution. So this is the AppAvail toolset that, like I say, can be hosted on the cloud, or it can be hosted within your on-premise environment. And obviously, there's differences between what can be done when it's in cloud versus on-premise, especially where you've got apps that need back-end connectivity, of course. Okay, so we're going to start with the evergreen test. So I'm going to go into our smoke test section and we'll look at the dashboard. So in this dashboard, what we're showing are 3 different versions of Windows 10. So we've got 1809, 1903 and 1903.1. So we've basically got 3 different images that we have included as part of this particular webinar. Now, within our environment, we've got a number of applications. So we can either test all of those applications, or we can just go through and test individual applications. Now, in my case, the first thing I'm going to do is actually capture a functional test. So not only do I want my smoke test to run an install, a launch, and an uninstall, but
Harry, can you hear me? Sorry
yes.
to interrupt. I think we're still seeing the slides and not the demonstration.
Ah, okay. Thank you, Charlie. Yeah, that's a good point. I knew I'd forget to switch it. Right, let me do the new share. Okay, here we go. So is that coming through now correctly? Yep.
Yep, that's
okay.
good.
Fabulous. All right, so this is the dashboard for the evergreen side. So sorry, this is the bit I was mentioning around having the 3 different images. Now, what we can do here is we can start to work with our application owners to create functional tests. Now, you wouldn't necessarily do this with every app, of course, but we might want to do it with the apps that we always test and we always go back to our application owners on. So I've got an application here as part of our solution that we've already loaded into the application manager module. So it's an application called Gym Membership, and it's been packaged in MSI and AppV format. Now, if I go to my Evergreen section, I have the option within the Evergreen section to then capture functional tests with the app owners. So a bit of information about this particular application. Number 1 is that you can see it has a dependency there on the Access database engine. So it's important that every time we load this application, we're also getting the database engine as well. And then secondly, we can start to create our functional tests. So I'm going to add a new test here. I'm going to tell the solution which version of the Windows 10 I want to run it on. And obviously, if this is within your environment, this is your image, it can be domain joined, it would have your GPO settings, etc., etc. And then we're going to create that test on a virtual machine. So over here, we can see that the virtual machine is starting. And what the solution will now do is it will now look at its virtual machine pool. So you can throw as many virtual machines at this as you want, obviously, you know, pragmatically in terms of how many concurrent sessions we might need to run. And then what it will do is it will now fire up the virtual machine at the back end from the pool, and it will allocate it to this particular function. And then it will also intelligently install our application. So we're not going to go to the virtual machine and have to install it. It will have already installed this particular application. Now, in addition to that, what we're also loading into the VM is the test capture tool. Now, I'm aware that lots of customers use lots of different test capture tools. We have embedded in this solution a test capture tool called Ranorex. So this is something, again, there's lots of these out there, but this is something that we've found very easy to use, especially from an application owner perspective in terms of capturing their tests. If you do use tools outside of Ranorex, then we can look at integrating those tools as part of a development cycle so that we can actually run your existing scripts within this tool, because obviously we don't want to recapture all of these test scripts. However, for the ones that we do want to do a new capture on, this is quite a good option for us. So let me just move this down a bit. And we're just going to wait for a second, and we can see now that the virtual machine is available. So we can now navigate to the virtual machine, and this is going to enable us to start our test capture. So you can see here that we've got the RANERX Studio already loaded in here. What you'll also see is that we've got our gym membership tool. And if I go to add remove programs, we should also see in here that the dependency application has been loaded. So there it is, the Access Database Engine. This has also been loaded into the tool. So as an app owner, I don't need to do anything here. I just need to capture my test script. Now, in order to capture the test script, I'm going to run this tool as an administrator, and we're going to fire up the RANERX Studio. Now, the RANERX Studio, it allows us, if we want to use it, to capture all sorts of different tests. So we're going to have the option to not only capture desktop application tests, but you can also capture web application tests as well. So as we move much more to web only, we can also test those web apps with this same solution. Now, in my case, the gym membership tool is a desktop application. So I'm going to fire up the desktop side of this, and we're going to call it the webinar gym membership test. So I'm going to capture a new test here, and let me just grab that text. Okay, what I'm then going to do is I'm then going to be able to browse for the application. So we're going to look within this virtual machine and try and find this application. So I happen to know that it's in, I think, Program Files x86, and it's Gym Tools, and this is the application. So we tell RANERX in this instance that that's the application we're going to capture the test script on. And then we can leave it with different focuses. We normally select no focus applied, and we're going to continue the process, and then we can finish. So what this is doing is this is now building us effectively a new test process. Now, what you can also see is that it's launched our application. So here's our application. So the first thing that we're now going to do is start to record the test. So if I click on this tab and hit the record button, what's now happening is that we've gone into record mode. So we're now recording our functional test script. Now, just so you know, best practice on this stuff is to have loads of small individual tests rather than one big test. And it just means that if something changes in the app, it's a lot easier to maintain later on. So I'm going to click into this box, and I'm going to put in my login credentials. Now, it's important that this is a capability of RANERX. So all of these credentials are then encrypted, and we can then use these credentials to log into the app as part of the test sequence. So I'm going to log into the application here, and then maybe I'm going to run a little test process. So let's say I want to know, for example, all of the doctors that are in a single status. And I'm going to click on the search button. So that's going to give us a result. And RANERX is intelligent enough that if you want to actually check the result, not just the function, you can also do that within the tool. And that's a bit more of an extensive sort of scripting capability. For this demo, I'm obviously just going to do a very simple test. So I've now completed my test, and I'm going to stop the process. Now, what that's done is that's saved all of the steps on that process. So what we're now able to do is to start to build that process into a test that we can load into our application manager tool. So I will go to the build and build the solution here. So this is now basically creating that test script for us. So it's going to complete the test script. And then what we can do is we can run our recording. So we can make sure that the test script works okay, and it goes through the process. So, oh, sorry, I've clicked on the wrong button there. I shouldn't have clicked that one. This one always fails. Sorry, I should have clicked on the run button up here. If I click on the run button up there, for some reason, this always, that other button doesn't work. So so this is running the test script now, and you can see it playing back the recording and of what happened. So that's basically now proving that this particular solution is working. So now we've got that to a point at which it's working, we can now upload that into our application manager. So here we can add the test script. So if I go to the RunnerX Studio, now the one thing we need to do here is zip this particular folder up. So we're going to zip up the contents of that that test that we just captured. And what we'll now do is basically upload that to our solution, and then we can show the solution running that test as part of a test script. So we'll select the zip here, and we'll again call it the same name that I called it before, give it a description, and then upload that script to our application manager solution. So we've now uploaded the test, all good to go, and the application owner is now finished with their particular capture. Now, as you can see with RunnerX, there's loads of stuff you can do in here, and there's lots of training and other bits that we're all going to get a lot more familiar with. But this is an option for you if you want to buy in a test, a functional test capture product as part of the application manager solution. You don't need to license that separately. Okay, so we're now going to complete the virtual machine. So that's now going to effectively take that virtual machine. It's going to uninstall everything. It's going to reset it back to where it was. Now what we're going to do is we're going to run a functional test script against it. So I'm going to scroll down onto our 1903.1. And you can see here all of the test scripts that we've got available for this application. So importantly, if you do create multiple test scripts, you can absolutely run them in sequence. So it's not just a case of one test script, you can run multiple test scripts. Now over here, I just want to run my new one, my webinar test script. So I'm going to disable that other test that we have here. So now when the solution runs the test, it's just going to run this individual test here. So let's get it scheduled. So we're going to go back to our solution, and we're going to test against the 1903 image. Now, as you can see, if, let's say, we've got a new Win 10 release, 20H2 comes out, we load the image into the tool, you can then select that image, but you can add all of the applications in the catalog. So the tool will automatically queue the applications, look and allocate them to virtual machines, and then it will just keep spinning them up over and over and over again to run through those tests. Hence why it can run 24/7 with 4, 10, 20 virtual machines, however much you want to throw at it to get your applications through this process. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to add my gym membership application to do the test. And we're going to run that test right now. So sorry, I just need to move everyone across. So we're going to create that test, and we're going to tell it to kick off. So again, what's going to happen now is that the solution has posted the test. So if I go to our applications in progress here, what we can now see is that the gym membership application has begun its evergreen smoke test. And we can see here that there is a log happening as to what's going on with this evergreen smoke test. Now, I'm going to go and look at the full test results so that we can start to see exactly what's happening within this particular test. So if we go over to the full test results, you can start to see that there's a script effectively being run. Now, what it's going to do is it's going to, again, look at the VM pool. It's going to allocate a VM. It's going to look at the application and its dependency. It's going to scan both of those for suitability for the test. It's going to look for a test script. And if there is a test script to run, it's going to install the runtime component of RunnerX and also download that test script. And then it's going to run that test script. And then what we also get through this process is a set of screen captures. So every time that screen changes within the VM, we get a capture of it. And this allows us very easily to start identifying failures and errors that we might need to diagnose later on. But also that we will get a video. Now, the reason this is really important is that obviously as part of this process, it would be really nice if we could go back to the application owner and say, look, we've got 20H2, we've run your smoke test, we've run your functional tests, they've all passed. If you want to have a look at the video, this is the tests or the test sequence as it ran through. So you can see here that on my screen, it's done all of those different activities. So we've now got screen captures, and you can see here the RunnerX component running. So as the RunnerX component runs, we get our test happening within the virtual machine. So this is all working perfectly. Everything looks good. And we know that we potentially don't really need to go back to our app owner and bother them with this application. Everything looks fine. And obviously at the end of this process, it will finish by uninstalling that application and making sure that that part of this is clean as well. So let me just cancel that out. And then, like I say, once the test completes, which will be in about a minute or so, we'll also then get a video that we can also display. So we'll just wait for that to come up, and then I'll be able to show you that video. So here we've got the screenshots, and shortly we will also be getting the video back as well. Now, what you can also see here, while we're just waiting for that video to appear, is that the end owner of the application can also still test that application on the virtual machine. So we can send a link so that an application owner can do a manual sign-off. Obviously, it's not always the case that an automated test process will be sufficient. So some of our application owners still will want to go into a clean environment and test their application. Now, importantly, with this part, you can also then say to the app owner, if they've got application A and they also want to test app A with B, C, D, and E, and F, we can build that as a prereq chain, and you can create a virtual machine effectively that's got all of those apps in for them to test against the appropriate environment. Now, the video that I was talking about has been generated here. So you can see that we've now got a video of our test. And if I just speed that up a little bit, what this will be doing is basically doing the install, running the test, and then closing down. So you can see that test running within the video. So we've got a capture of basically everything that happened as part of this particular process. So all nice and contained within the solution. And really the value here is just the ability to have all of this in one ecosystem, and then obviously have that feed into Dashworks to manage the project end to end as part of not only app readiness, but all the other readiness tasks that we have to typically manage within the environment. So I'm just going to cancel back out of that. So that's really what I wanted to show you as part of the evergreen smoke testing piece. Now, the second component of this is the application packaging. So I'll do this in a sort of 5 minutes time, and then we'll leave a bit of time for Q&A at the end. So let's say, for example, we've now got a nice slick process and we're enabling our application owners to self-package. Now, the reason I'm so excited about this bit is that I'm not really particularly technical and I can run this process. So it gives me hope that we can actually start to look at this as a potentially a self-service option as we move forward. Now, the idea is that this particular solution, obviously you guys all already have request systems in place. Now, this solution can also work as a request system for the app, or as we go forward, we're looking to integrate it with tools like ServiceNow. So the request would go into ServiceNow, and ServiceNow would automatically populate Application Manager with the details that's been collected. So obviously in my case, I'm going to create this all within Application Manager. So I've just downloaded, literally just before this webinar, a new version of the Microsoft Office toolkit, readiness toolkit, I should say. And what we're going to do is I'm going to package this application. So I'm the application owner for it. I'm going to package it. Now, it's got a new version to it, which is here. So I'm just going to grab that version number. And we're going to call it package version 1.0, and it's going to be global. Or actually, because I did one earlier, I'm going to call it 1.1, just to give it a new number. So what we've now got is a few options. So we can either package the application, and this means that it's going to effectively spit out an MSI or an AppV copy of this application. We can repackage it, which is primarily for things like Windows 7 to 10, if we've got existing packages and we need to repackage for Windows 10. AppV conversion is if we've got to convert 4.6 to 5.1. AppV packages, and then in the future we're also going to have the options around MSIX and IntuneWin. So those two are coming very soon, and we're going to be able to convert apps to those formats as well automatically. We're going to select the image that I want to package this against, and then we've got a view the virtual machine or not here. Now, what this is effectively, if you put a no, it means that the application will silently install and there'll be no user intervention. In most cases, the app owner is going to want to install their apps and follow the appropriate process. So I'm going to say yes here, and then we're going to click on next and move forward. Now, we can also add in prereqs. You can see here, we can add prereqs to the application, and we can also tell Application Manager if this application is superseding another application. So we can keep that log, and we can also do intelligent merging if we want to. So there's an option within the tool to do that. In my case, I'm going to say next, and we're going to now grab that application. So here is the readiness toolkit. Now, again, important to note that you have to zip up the application because it will handle all sorts of applications. So it can be exes containing multiple MSIs, it can be multiple MSIs, all sorts of stuff. Could just be files if we're doing a file share based app. So we're going to upload that. You can see it's automatically tried to identify the silent install switch. So we're going to set that as the command line, and we're going to upload the application source. So this means that we're keeping the application media, again, within the single catalog. Now, what the solution will do, again, similar process, really. It will look back at the virtual machines. It will identify if there is one it can allocate, and it will then fire up that virtual machine. And what it's going to do this time, rather than installing all the RunnerX tools and the application itself, it's going to basically copy the source files for that application into a directory so that I can perform the install and any post-configuration changes I might need. So as this machine is going to start, we'll, within a minute or so, typically then get a link that we can click on. Now, whilst that's firing up, what I also want to do is I also want to talk about the settings, because what effectively is happening within the tool set here is that we have the ability to have lots of different settings that apply effectively as a template. So within your organization, you'll typically have standards. You'll have naming standards, reg keys, maybe folders, how the icons appear, all this kind of stuff. And you can set that within the settings here. So these are all general settings that you can apply to the MSIs, to the AppVs. All of these different settings can be global. Now, you can also obviously change these locally as well on each app, but you can set some standards effectively for your organization. Now, what we can see is that my virtual machine is now ready. So I can then move to that virtual machine. And what will happen now is that machine will fire up. So effectively, as I said, what's happened is that this one I'm doing a manual install. So as the app owner, I can go to the source that's giving me my application, and I'm going to install that application into this VM. Now the VM is in snapshot mode. So effectively, it's snapshotting everything that I'm selecting. So I'm going to choose my appropriate click buttons, and I'm going to perform the install here. So it's just doing a standard install. This is a simple app just for purposes of speed really on the demo. And you can see that the app is now installed. So if I close that down, that app has now installed. Now, importantly, and because this is self-service, there might be some other things that I need to do as part of this app. So maybe I actually need to create a new folder. So as part of this, I might need to go into documents and create a new folder for this application. Now, by doing this, the solution is capturing these changes. So effectively, this will now become part of the package. So you don't have to keep going into lots of tools and creating all this stuff. You can actually do it within the VM, and it will capture that and make it part of the package. So I'm going to create a folder there, and that will now be part of the package. Now, I've tested the app. It all looks like it works fine. So I'm going to complete my virtual machine. And what will happen now is that the packaging process will start. So again, the solution has realized that the install is completed. Any changes that I wanted to make have completed. And now it's going to package the app. And what it's going to do is it'll package it into both AppV format and MSI format. And like I say, in the near-term future, it will also package to MSIX and Intune Win format. And then we can also add formats later on. So it might be, you know, I don't know how much sort of Citrix specific packaging we all do these days, but, you know, it might be that we need to do something like Citrix or ThinApp, or maybe app attach with WVD will need something specific that's not just MSIX. So whatever it is, we'll be looking to add that capability into the tool. Now, you can see that the package is running through the process here. So it will obviously take a little bit of time. You can see that the AppV package has also kicked off at the same time. So whilst that's packaging, I'll just show you some of the other areas that you can add information. So you've got a discovery section here, so we can add more information about the application. At the moment, these are pre-canned fields. In future releases, we're going to add the ability for you to add your own fields into the tool. So you'll be able to do that. You've also got the ability to not only upload documentation, but you can see here that it's also captured a video of the installation that I did. So we've got the ability here to show what those install steps were. You've also got the ability to add issues, so you can report and log issues in here. You can look at a timeline for the app in here, and quite a basic sort of thing. I mean, we're not pretending to be Snow or anything in here, but you can also load in things like licensing documents, or put a count in as to how many licenses you've got, which we can then check against Dashworks to see how many installs are out there. And flag up that there might be a compliance issue. So you've got all this ability in here, and the packaging process, as you can see, is still going through. Now, at this point, we have an AppV package. So I can look at the AppV package information. You can see again that the solution is identifying for us any potential issues with that. We've got a packaging log here that we can look into that is showing us when everything's happened. And we've also, for AppV now, got an AppV package. So the idea being that we can then take that package, and through some scripts and customization, we can then push that into SCCM or the appropriate distribution technology. Now, I'm hoping I'm not sure we're going to get this in time to allow for Q&A, but if I go into, let's go into another application very quickly. So if I go back to my gym membership app here and look at the package media, what you would typically see in here is a whole bunch of information associated with this. So it's capturing DLLs and files, and all of that information is displayed within the solution, and it has actually finished. But I did want to make sure that we had enough time for Q&A. Obviously, we can now take that package, we can distribute it, but we can also now evergreen test it and capture a functional test as well. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of what the tool set is all about. Now I just need to reshare the presentation, because we just wanted to spend a minute on the roadmap. So we've already been getting loads of feedback from customers around the functionality and capability in here. So immediately this month, we're going to be able to do testing on specific hardware. We're adding, we've got VMware support, but we're adding Hyper-V support, which is again really important for some of our early adopters. We've got MSIX and Intune Win coming, along with enhanced Dashworks integrations. Obviously, we're bolting these two components together. And then we'll be looking at the more strategic things. So looking at Azure and seeing if we can create express routes back in. So being able to offer this as a SaaS platform, but a proper SaaS platform with connectivity back in to your environments. And then also, as we go forward and people want to convert to MSIX, looking at pre-conversion analytics. So understanding before we try to convert an app, whether it will convert, and being able to report back to you on what will convert, but then using that information in Dashworks to identify which users can go to which platform. So if all my apps, for example, are suitable for MSIX, maybe I can move to a completely Intune Win environment. Maybe if those won't convert, I've got a stick on my physical device or whatever it may be. So all of these things are coming, and obviously we're looking to, again, drive that roadmap with feedback from customers as we go through. So I think it's time for Q&A. So I don't know, Monique, if you want to jump in and let's have a look at the questions that we've got.
Awesome. Okay, we're now in the Q&A section. And I just want to remind you guys again that if you do have a question, then please submit it in the box at the bottom right of your screen. Okay, let's jump right in. Our first question for today is, and I think I'm going to give this to you, Charlie. How does the licensing work?
Sure, yeah, that's a question we certainly anticipated. I guess the first point to mention is that it's available as a standalone module, so it's not dependent on the core Dashworks suite. Barry's gone through some key features today on testing and packaging, and we can separate the licensing out into those core functionalities as well, or combine them together. And the licensing will be based on a per application package model as well. So it will be volume specific. We have our standard bands, and then you'll have two options: a subscription option or a consumption option, which will basically be a burn through licensing. And the other point to mention will be that, you know, if you have any alternative requirements, we can certainly discuss those in more detail.
Okay, thanks so much.
Mon, I might want to do the one from Brian that was in the Q&A. So I think this will be a good one for Craig.
Okay. There's a few that Craig has actually, I think, already answered. So.
Okay, well, let's take the one from Brian. So can we do the functional and integrated tests basically as part of a specific application owner environment, if you like? So this application owner always wants to run these tests against this suite of apps. So maybe Craig, you can jump in here as to you know, whether that's possible today or how we might look to enhance the product in the future to handle it.
Thanks, Barry. I think I might have already answered this question indirectly on a second question, but let's go over it again just to add a bit of clarity. So currently at the moment, we test applications which are singular sort of identities as such. But what we are looking to do is to be able to group those applications or those identities into a group. So for example, a business unit, we could group all of those applications and just allocate a business unit as a whole, as a test. So currently not at this moment. I think Barry explained and showed that the application picks up the prerequisites of other applications and regression tests those. So within the workflow as well, what the solution will also do is it will identify a single application. It will then test all the prerequisites to that application, whether that's 3 or 4 levels down, 10 levels down. There's no limit on that. And then it will actually run through the rest of the applications within that sort of application hierarchy as well. I hope that sort of answers the question.
Yep.
Can you track the testing scenarios per tester or app for reuse? So we currently track only per app. So everything, the identities around everything is around the application rather than the actual tester itself.
Okay, and like I said, you know, we're looking for lots of feedback on this. So as we go forward, we're hoping that you guys and part of our community, an important part of our community, are going to help drive the roadmap into exactly you know, what this needs to be, and we're going to be throwing quite a lot of investment and development effort into this product as well, to get things done, get the quick hits done, so that we can get this out in amongst you as quickly as possible. So I think maybe I know we're a couple of minutes over, so maybe one last question, Mon. I think we've got a question about Admin Studio, don't we? And sort of how this compares. So maybe if I take that one. So what's important here is that we don't see this as a real competitor to Admin Studio. We're not trying to be Admin Studio. We may end up being Admin Studio longer term, but what this really is much more around the ecosystem and shifting things towards a much more self-service model. So rather than just being an application packaging tool, this is much more around how you've got the entry point, how you've got the exit point, everything that needs to happen in the middle, and essentially getting this to be so slick that we can have the app owners package their own apps. So that really is the focus here. It's not a direct competitor right now to Admin Studio, where you might go and edit the MSI and do lots of you know, funky stuff with it. Basically you can do most of that within the snapshot window. You've got post configuration options in here, but there may always be certain applications that we can't auto package that will need some editing. And then you can either use a tool like Orca or something or Admin Studio, obviously, within the VM. So ultimately we'll be building probably some of that functionality in as we go along. But right now, this is much more aimed at providing a self-service mechanism for simple, medium and complex apps that can be auto-converted to the appropriate packaging format. So I think with that, apologies, we've gone a little bit over. I very much hope this was an interesting session. Certainly for the guys that haven't seen this, maybe an update for the guys that have. Obviously, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to get in contact with us, or if you want to do a deep dive session with us, we're all available to take that a little bit further. We're going to distribute the recording. That'll be available on the website. And also, if you need access to any of the slides, again, just please let us know and we can provide them to you. So we look forward to working with you on this. Have an enjoyable rest of the day. And I think it's a good moment to close the session. So thanks again for all of your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.